I've known Karen Conti since she was but a girl. John, you knew Karen Conti's dad.
I knew Karen Conti's father, a great stand-up comedian Joe Conti.
And Karen's a good friend, has been for a very long time. Karen Conti and
the best.
Her late, great husband, Greg Adamski, were the key folks in linking me with my birth mom and my birth sisters.
Yeah, that's right.
And all of that. And, of course, once they found out I was around, they moved. But that's not Karen's fault.
No. Karen, she did some legal stuff for me, too, and she's fascinating to watch in a courtroom. She just commands the courtroom.
She's got a new book called Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy, and there's a backstory here, as you might guess. And she joins us now. How are you, pal?
I am doing well. It's so nice to be back on the radio with you. You know, Steve, I was just thinking, we have had radio dealings with each other for 30 years.
That's amazing, because you haven't aged a minute, and I look like a banana in the sun.
That's so
true.
So that's just no good. All right, so let's get to the backstory here. Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy. You and Greg had contact with Gacy first at what point?
1993. And, you know, Gacy was doing all his murders when I was in high school. So flash ahead, I'm now a lawyer. And we hear on the radio, actually, we were listening to WGN on the radio, and it said Gacy had an execution date set for May of 1994. And we hadn't really had any executions in Illinois for a long period of time. And we kind of were just laughing about, hey, wouldn't that be weird if we represented Gacy? Well, a couple days later, we got the call to represent him. So it was really surreal.
Now, people need to know that this falls under the category of everyone is entitled to a defense. But when you get that call, do you have that conversation where you go, well, I don't know if we could do this?
Well, the first call was he wanted us to represent him in some civil matters that were pending. And, you know, why would you care about civil matters when your life is going to be ended in 7 months? But, you know, we were just curious and we wanted to go down and see what that was like. What is it like to look evil in the eye? I had never been on death row. He was the most prolific serial killer in the country at the time. And we just couldn't pass up the opportunity to just check it out. We had really no intention of doing anything at that time other than just, you know, satisfying our curiosity. But when we got down there and realized that, hey, this guy is going to be executed, and once he's executed, then the rest of the people on death row are going to fall in place, we decided that we wanted to take on the death penalty final appeals.
That's what I wanted you to get to right there, because that was the key to the case. That was the linchpin.
Well, yeah. And, you know, I have always been against the death penalty. And I talk in my book about how when I was a young child, I was arguing with my father about the death penalty. You know, my dad would say, if someone kills someone, they should kill someone. And I would argue back, well, does that mean if my room is messy, mom can come in and mess up my room? Does that make any sense? You know, so there a lawyer was born, I guess. But exactly. So, yeah, I was always against the death penalty. I just never thought I would represent somebody in a case like this.
Karen, I'm about halfway through the book. I absolutely love it. You're such a great writer because exactly what you're talking about is I don't want to put it down. You know, I read a little bit before I go to bed every night, but I love how you describe everything in such great detail, things that we'd want to know, like the drive to Menard, when you get to the prison, what you go through, the vending machines, the area where the other death row inmates are. That's fascinating.
The visual.
Yeah, the visual that you paint is just, it's unlike anything I've ever read before.
Well, thank you. And you know, what's interesting is that I cannot remember what I did yesterday at all. Like I have no clue. But for some reason, that period of time is sort of etched in my brain. And, you know, I assume that I'm getting a few of the facts wrong because it's been 30 years. But, you know, it's sort of like a movie that replays in my mind.
So you sit down with him, and he is engaging. He is frightening. He's what?
He's not frightening. There's nothing frightening about this guy. You know, he's 5'9". He's paunchy. He's got the prison pallor from being in prison for 14 years. And you just cannot imagine when you look at him that he's capable of such sadistic, horrific crimes. And, you know, you somehow think there's going to be a tattoo of evil on someone's head or, you know, something that would give you a little heads up on what he was really about. But there just wasn't. And, you know, that's the chilling part, that if he walks among us, capable of those kinds of crimes. Who else is out there who has that capability?
And the irony, Karen, you said that he was always, or usually, very nice to you, oddly respectful of women.
Yes. He really loved women. He loved his mother. He loved his 2 sisters. He had good relationships with his 2 wives. And he treated me very differently than the rest of the male team. And, he called me dollface, and he stood up when I walked in the room. It was very, very odd. I did not expect that from him. But again, when you're dealing with a sociopath, they do what they think you want them to do and what they're trying to manipulate everybody. Everybody's a pawn to a sociopath. And so when you realize that some of these pleasantries were done for a purpose.
Karen, I remember, this is John DeCosta, I remember you telling me a story, and I don't want to give anything away, but it fascinated me that when it all wrapped up, he attempted to give you a hug.
Yes. When we were saying our goodbyes hours before the execution, Gacy took us one by one and wanted to speak with us individually to say goodbye. And he did. He gave me a hug. He gave Greg a hug. He gave all the other lawyers a hug. And he was very pleasant, and he said the right things. Thank you for helping me, and on and on. He was still making jokes at the very end. But that's the way Gacy was.
Wow.
Did he profess innocence?
He confessed to the crimes when he was arrested. Mm-hmm. And he confessed in great detail from what I understand and from what I've read. And actually, I've heard some of the tapes. But thereafter, he started backing down on that and saying, oh, no, I didn't kill anyone, which was just, he was just a liar.
Madness, yeah.
So by the time I got to him, he never confessed to anything. In fact, the only thing he confessed to is running a cemetery without a license.
But you also, as a defense attorney, you don't want to hear that anyway, right?
Well, at that point, Steve, we weren't talking about guilt or innocence. We weren't trying to get him out of prison. In fact, Gacy did not want to get out of prison. He told me specifically. I'm not that I could have done anything about that, but we were just trying to avoid the execution. That's what we were trying to do. So in that regard, guilt and innocence wasn't as important as the method of execution and how it was going to be carried out. And those are the kinds of things the final death row appeals deal with.
Well, Andrea loves the book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet because you haven't sent me my free copy that you'll sign.
You can buy a book and have her autograph it to you.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to autograph
it was just so good, Karen. About halfway through, like I said, I shot you an email and I said, I think you're just such a great author. I want to know because it's a fascinating topic. And I wanted you to tell everyone what people say to you when they, the 2 things that they say to you and what you want people to take away after they read the book.
Well, I still get introduced all the time as Karen Conti represented John Wayne Gacy. Like that's the most interesting aspect of my career, which, I guess it is. It's a novelty.
No, but it's not. I've known you forever. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. But, people say like, oh, gosh, how could you represent such a terrible person? And in the same breath, but what was he like?
Yeah.
Of
right.
course.
Right?
Sure.
We are repulsed. And we are fascinated. Yep. And I do want to say, and thank you for asking this question, Andrea, because this is not a rehash of the Gacy crimes, because that's not my story to tell. Because like I said, I was in high school when it was going on, and I didn't represent him in the trial. But what it is about is, a young lawyer getting thrown into this like incredibly high profile case and having to deal with the backlash of all the press and all the crazy stuff and the stress of representing somebody whose life is actually in your hands. And now that I'm looking back 30 years, I can look in retrospect and see how that changed me. We all have a pivotal point, right? Where something changes you, whether it's a death in the family or illness, or you get fired from a job and your life changes. And if you do it the right way, you learn from it and you become more resilient.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Congratulations on the book. It is out and available everywhere. And I've never said this before, but buy 3 or 4 copies because you're careless. You'll lose one, then download 3 more. And get it. What is it called, Karen?
It's called Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy, Defending America's Most Evil Serial Killer on Death Row. I appreciate your support, guys.
Of course. And the subtitle's super important because it's not Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy watching the Bears on a Sunday. It's Killing Time, as you said. So, Karen, nice to talk to you. I'll see you later.
Nice to talk to you, Steve and Andrea.
There you go.
Thanks, Karen. Take care. It really is such a good book.
And she met you too, John. She just forgot to say goodbye.
No, it's okay. Whatever.
No, I think she's like, no.
Whatever. That's okay. Whatever.
Yeah, no, you seem to be taking it well.
No, that's fine. Whatever.